I'm just helping you commercialize your product from concept. If you just have an idea of it, building formulation, getting marketing insights on who your target market should be, where you should probably sell this product. And if you are to do B2B, who your ideal B2B partners should be based on your type of product. Doing competitive assessments of the market, what is already on the market, and how can you differentiate your product so it stands out and attracts the right clientele that you're trying to go after.
This is Farai Machina, a food scientist and entrepreneur. In her corporate career, she has successfully launched several consumer packaged goods, including energy bars, cereals, and crackers, which are distributed in major retail chains such as Walmart, Meijer, Sam's Club, Target, H-E-B, Costco, and many other outlets. Farai is not only an accomplished food technologist, but also an experienced entrepreneur with over 15 years of expertise.
The first business I started, inspired by my mother, I actually owned a rental company, Farai Machina Events. And from Farai Machina Events, I started Flowertivity. I started kitchen to retail foods as a retirement plan.
I recently had the opportunity to sit down with Farai to gain insights into how she effectively manages her multiple companies while maintaining her role as a food technologist in the corporate world. Join us as Farai shares words of wisdom on topics such as acquiring your first customer, networking strategies, and many more. Listen to her journey as a successful Black female food technologist and entrepreneur. So I'll just start by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Sure. So my name is Farai Machina. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And I'm an American citizen now, but I call myself a Zimbabwean American. I have been in the United States for about 20 years, and I came with my parents, with my family, my siblings. We migrated over. And I can say my journey really obviously precedes my existence because my parents set the platform for all the experiences that I'm having now. Moving from Zimbabwe, my father came from the rural areas, met my mother as a teacher, and they built something together that enabled me to realize my dreams today. So I studied food science in college. I wanted to be a food scientist since I was in high school. And that's been my dream, to use food as medicine, because I grew up around grandparents who used natural herbs for ailments and things like that. So I just wanted to pursue that as a career. And I eventually got into Penn State here in Pennsylvania, studied food science as my bachelor's degree, and embarked on this journey as a food scientist, which I am still doing up to now. It's been 16 years in the industry, and I absolutely love it. And along that journey, became an entrepreneur because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents have side hustles themselves that they pursue. And I took on my mother's type of side hustle as a creative entrepreneur herself, doing events. So I have event businesses, but at the same time, near and dear to my heart, the food business sector, I do own my own food businesses as well. And I have a beautiful daughter. Her name is Kumbi. She's 11, and she keeps me on my toes. But pretty much that's what grounds me as a person. With all my busy schedules, at least I have somebody that reminds me that there's a life to live. So I'm fortunate to have that.
Great story, great story. There's a lot to take out of that.
Yeah.
Especially, I just want to do a follow-up on the issue of having your parents coming to the United States and setting a platform for you to be a success in your life. How do you see that working out, especially from a perspective of a lot of immigrants? What difference does it make? A person who is coming by on himself or by herself at the age of, say, 25, 30, as compared to someone who comes to America at the age of 11, 10? What difference?
I think when you come at an older age, if you're coming from a foreign country, maybe a developing country or an underdeveloped country, you tend to have a tenacity that you bring with you because you have an aspiration, you have a desire to live a better life. And that's what my parents brought with them. They came at a much older age. They came out in their 30s. And we were really young at the time, of course, but they paid it forward. My parents worked very hard. They gave up a lot of luxuries when we were children to ensure that we had the education that we needed, the resources that we needed to be successful. They did not want to repeat the cycle of where they were coming from. And so they were very determined to do that. And we saw them do it. We saw them pay it forward. We saw them making a lot of sacrifices for us. And so if you're an immigrant coming at an age of 25, you're relatively young, you're trying to discover who you are at the same time. There's a pressure for you to succeed, and trying to balance that can be really, really challenging, in addition to cultural shock, trying to adjust to a new environment, new mindsets, and new realities. I believe in the developed countries, people tend to be a little more relaxed because they're not striving for basics, right? They're not striving to figure out, okay, how do I succeed? The platforms are typically laid out for you, and it's up to you to be successful. Education, high school, elementary is free, right? You don't pay for that. That's paid for by the state if you go to a public school. And so it's different from most foreign countries where you pay for tuition, elementary level and up. So that creates a completely different mindset. And so as a young person at 25, I know you want to live your life and enjoy it, but you do unfortunately carry the burden of having an opportunity that most of your peers do not have. And now you have to show what can be done with that opportunity. And that's what my parents pretty much did. They just paid it forward and gave up a lot of luxuries in order for us to be successful.
That is great. That is great. So take me through the journey of you being a food scientist and then at the same time doing entrepreneurship. How did you start? Like, at what point did you say, you know what, I am working, but I want to do entrepreneurship at the same time? What happened? What were the triggers for you to do that?
That's a really good question. So the trigger for me was the volatility of corporate. Sometimes you grow up thinking, I'm just gonna go to school, get this job, and my life is set.
Yeah.
The realities of life is that's not how it works. You're not in control of that. There are other people that determine whether you have a job today and not have the job tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think 5 years into my career, we went through a series of layoffs with the company that I worked for. Even though I was not laid off, I got to see the impact that it had on the people that were laid off, and really didn't have anything else to fall back on other than to look for another job. And so I decided that I didn't want to not have that, to just live in that anxiety of, hey, it could be me tomorrow. So it prompted me to pursue entrepreneurship. And because I come from a family of my parents having side hustles and doing all of these other things, it was kind of easy for me to pick that up as an alternative. And I never left my corporate career, of course, but I always had these businesses just in case. As a just in case, something happens, I'm just going to do something part-time and, watch it grow. And eventually it just grew because I stayed consistent. I kept the business. I grew other businesses and I developed other businesses and I started to enjoy it. And through that journey, you learn to balance. Being that I'm a food scientist and then I have creative businesses, it was a really nice way to have my technical side. What I do at work is very technical, and then when I go home, I get to explore the creative. That helped me balance that urge to want to have fun because I do what I enjoy as my business. And then it actually gives you permission to then actually have fun outside of work and not feel like you're working all the time.
Okay.
But honestly, the prompt for me was security for myself initially. And then as I grew my businesses, I began to see how empowering it is to have your own business because it actually shifts your mindset, even at work. How you look at your job and how you look at the value that will bring changes because you're an entrepreneur and now you understand what it's like to run a business. When you actually go to work, you actually increase your value because now you understand what's supposed to happen in order for that business to be successful, and your conversations change and your influence also changes in your corporate setting.
That's great. Great to hear that being an entrepreneur also makes your mindset to shift as an employee at a company. Now you are looking at value from a different perspective as an employee. Like, I have to bring value here because I'm being paid. because you're
Right.
also maybe paying people at your company.
Exactly. Yep.
Interesting. So take me through, which company did you start? Which business did you start? Like the first one that you say, I am now doing this. And how difficult was it? How long did it take you to maybe break even and even make a profit?
The first business I started, inspired by my mother because she did weddings while she
Okay.
was a teacher.
Mhm.
I started doing events. I started doing weddings myself. So I actually owned a rental company. It still exists. It's Adorned Occasions. I started a rental company. And basically I'm renting out tables, chairs, linens, and all of those things.
Mhm.
And that was supposed to be a weekend thing because it fits right well into the weekend. Most events happen during the weekends. And
Okay.
actually, my strategy with my business was not to take a business loan. My
Okay.
strategy was to self-fund my business. Because at the time, the idea of taking a loan and then having another burden in your income in case it doesn't work out, I decided to take the longer route to
Okay.
business growth, which is self-funding my own business, growing it bit by bit. So if I invested $200 in a set of inventory, it's inventory that I would have studied the market. I study my market. I look at what other people are renting out, what is renting out the most. I
Mhm.
actually call other companies in the same business as I am to find out, hey, what actually sells the most? And those receptionists, they're willing to talk to you.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not talking to the owner, but I'm talking to the folks that work there and take part-time jobs to work there and to see how things are done. And then you just start to grow bit by bit, self-funding it yourself. And the money that you make the
Mhm.
first 5 years, you do not consume. You put
Okay.
it back in the business. And because I took the longer route, obviously I'm saying 5 years because those 5 years I had an income coming in because I have a full-time job. So I did
Okay.
not have the pressure to want to extract from the business. So um, breaking even was not something that was like a major goal or milestone for me, simply because I only took, basically, I got the money back within the first few months,
Mhm.
simply because I'm only building bit by bit. And I'm also leveraging the fact that I'm letting the business fund itself. So the goal is to allow the business to eventually start funding itself and you're not taking on debt.
Okay.
So that was the first business I started, and then eventually got into florals as a segue from the rentals.
Okay.
Strategy being it's easier to diversify the same type of industry. Like if you have a business in one particular industry, there's so many ways you can diversify your services so you increase your revenue potential. And so that's what I did. Getting into florals, now I have Farai Machina events. And
Mhm.
from Farai Machina events, I started Flowertivity years down the line, where I now teach other people how to build event businesses and how to do florals and things like that. While I was doing all of that, that's the event part. My career in the food industry, I noticed that a lot of my peers, I was always the youngest in
Okay.
my research and development team. For most of my career, I was either one of two young people, and most of them were older and retiring. And I didn't like the idea of retiring, and then that's it. That's the end of the dream, and you're just going fishing, and that's
Okay.
all. And maybe you get consulted here and there. So I started kitchen to retail foods as a retirement plan. I
Okay.
just don't see myself going fishing or
Mhm.
not doing anything because I really love what I do. I have big dreams to go back home to Africa and build our food systems back up. So I
Okay.
started kitchen to retail foods during COVID, actually, and picked up quite a few clients during COVID
Mhm.
um, that were trying to launch food products. Believe it or not, during that season, I guess people got to think about what they want to do with their lives. And I met a lot of people that were trying to start food businesses, and I
Okay.
helped facilitate that process. So that's how that business got born, and eventually diversifying. I started Food Science Africa, which is
Okay.
now supposed to build the bridge for me to go back home and actually build an innovation center in Zimbabwe or within the SADC region, where we can now leverage our own indigenous crops to feed the rest of the
Mm,
world.
mm. Interesting. Interesting. That's a very interesting journey that you have just taken me through right now. I'll try to just go back a little bit. When you started your rental company, and
Mm-hmm.
working for free at certain companies. How did you manage to get those in, like kind of internships where you work for somebody for free? What was the conversation like with the owners or the managers of those companies?
I think if you're willing to pay it forward, they're willing to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Working for free, I would not take it to heart as, oh no, I'm missing out on something if they're not paying me.
Mm-hmm.
You basically you speak on value, the value that you bring to the company and what you're trying to do, and
Mm-hmm.
being honest about what you're trying to do. Hey,
Okay.
I have a passion for this, and I would really love to learn by
Mm-hmm.
joining your team, and I'm willing to work for free, and here are the things that I can do here, and I'm willing to do any work, right? You cannot be picky, right? Because the goal is to learn, and regardless of the position that you have, as long as you're able to hold conversations and you're willing to work across different, wherever they place you, just be humble enough
Okay.
to at least get in the door and
Mm-hmm.
learn the systems and learn how they work, and being honest about why you are there. Most people are actually willing to help you. Most people are willing to take on mentorship roles with you.
Okay.
So I went through the avenue of mentorship
Okay.
as somebody who's aspiring to eventually run her own company. And so it kind of made it easier for me to navigate those circles and still build my network, because once I start my own businesses, I'm going to need those businesses too. And what you find that's interesting is those same competitors are going to be your friends. They
Mm-hmm.
have something that you don't have,
Exactly.
and you end up like loaning each other resources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to create enemies on your way up. And sometimes honesty is the best practice. And not everybody obviously is going to give you that opportunity if they
Okay.
feel like you're a threat, which can happen, or if they're gatekeeping, which happens. But
Okay.
just continue to look, and there's always a network of people that's willing to work with you.
Great. 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 You know, a lot of people don't think that way, that I can actually work for free to get value so that I have the experience then to run my company. That's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to hear how exactly do you get your first customer?
My first customer with the event business, I I was my own first customer. So
Okay.
each time I have a birthday
Uh-huh.
or I have a milestone, I actually execute my event as if I am my own customer.
Okay.
Then I invite my local country club managers. I invite key
Mm,
individuals that will open up doors for me in the industry, and
interesting.
I will host my event at their venue.
Yeah.
So my first event, my first big break, I would call it, where I got a contract, a 3-year contract with a country club to be the
Okay.
exclusive provider for all their decorations, was when I was actually having a baby shower for my child. And I decided to
Mm,
host my baby shower there, and I executed it as if I am my ideal client and I'm providing that service for myself. And they loved it so much. They asked for my business card. And then that set me off on a nice 3-year contract.
yeah.
And I
Yes.
was averaging 60 weddings a year with them,
Yeah.
um, which
That's
was
a
a
lot.
lot because I was still new and I had part-time employees, and it was really stressful, but at the same time very exciting. And I learned so fast and I learned so much. And
Mhm.
that opportunity actually led to additional opportunities where I
Yeah.
was now working with the local newspaper and the
Mm.
local magazine to throw events for them
Okay.
because of that initial opportunity. And it just grew. It was just
Mm.
a domino effect of opportunities. But
Mhm.
I started as my own clientele, and I started using my own services to demonstrate. Um, and that
Great.
may not be the case depending on your type of business that you
Mhm.
provide.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's true that sometimes you have to pay it forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show what value you bring to someone before you start asking them for money, and make sure you can actually do the work that you say you can do.
That's
So
great.
yeah.
That is interesting. And so now I'm fascinated because, you know, getting a like a council and then they give you a contract for 3 years. That's a very big contract for someone who's just starting, right? And
Exactly, it was the execution.
yeah, so 60 weddings, I mean, per year, that's almost a wedding every week. Um,
Exactly.
Now my question is, how did you price yourself? This was your first time doing business as an
Yeah.
individual. How did you price your products or your services? And how did you stand with that price? Like, this is my price. Did you
Mm-hmm.
find consensus the first time you mentioned the price vis-a-vis the value, the perceived value, or did you negotiate on the table? What really happened for you to sign that contract?
So with the contract, I referenced the current contract that they had because they already had another legacy contract.
Oh,
I had my own price point that I was using for public. But
mhm,
because it's a contract as a business to business, and that was my first business to business experience, I
mhm.
made sure that my running costs were covered. And then I ensured I had a 20% buffer for profitability. So no
Okay.
matter what happens in between, I'm protected. My bottom line is protected. And then anything else I made money by volume, which is why I was averaging 60 weddings a year. I had to recover if I invest in anything or new inventory. It was faster for me to recover it. And after that is just maintenance that I'm paying for. And my margin was at least 35% at minimum,
Great,
where I got the profits, 35%
great.
minimum.
That is very insightful. I think a lot of people are even afraid to approach a public institution to say, how am I going to pitch myself, you know? And I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people learn from your experience. It's great. So then you ended up going to, you call it Flowertivity, right? Is it Flowertivity?
Yes.
Now, so explain more about Flowertivity. What do you do with Flowertivity? And I understand it's still running. And can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit? How can people what can they learn and how can they participate? What can they buy if there's something that you're selling or services that you're offering?
So Flowertivity, I launched it in 2023. I actually bought the name 5 years ago when I knew I wanted to be an educator, but I just didn't know how to do it. There's a lot of gatekeeping in the industry, and you sort of have to really know what you're talking about and what you're doing because most of the time you'll be on your own. So
Okay.
within those 5 years, I mastered my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Um, took the time to identify my clientele, and I decided my clientele would be who I was when I started,
Okay.
what I needed when I started and I couldn't get, and the resources that I needed when I started and I couldn't get. So I decided when, that would be
Okay.
my ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
So Flowertivity is an academy for entrepreneurs in the event industry or beginners in the event industry or anyone who's currently in the event industry who wants to expand their business and grow their business if they're struggling to grow it.
Mm-hmm.
So I emphasize that it is for beginners, not for advanced or well-seasoned event professionals, of course.
Okay.
And I do sell products through it. I sell classes through it, one-on-one classes. I sell group classes,
Mm-hmm.
group parties if you just want to enjoy a non-academic structured environment of just making floral arrangements.
Okay.
And I also offer flower care products, my own line of flower care products
Mm-hmm.
that goes together with the classes and the material that I sell online.
Great. Great. So you're offering both services and then products like the flower kit that you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay. You mentioned about mastering the craft. How did you master the craft? Did you buy a course? Did you attend? What exactly happened? Did you go on YouTube and just learn?
Oh, a combination of all. I
Okay.
spent, I think, almost $10,000
Mm,
in conferences and classes.
okay.
And I got a lot of good content out of it, but it wasn't satisfying what I
Mhm.
needed as a beginner.
Okay.
Again, going back to that gatekeeping, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the journey is to discover what's working and what's not working.
Hmm.
And I did leverage YouTube a lot, but watching YouTube is not the same as having someone
Yeah.
teaching you hands-on.
Yeah.
And so you just take a leap of faith. For me, I just started by going to my local floral wholesaler with
Okay.
photographs of what I wanted to make. And then I'd have them walk me through their floral wholesale and show me what those flowers are and teach me the names and
Okay.
help me estimate how many are in there and watch them make it. And because some of these floral wholesalers have designers on site, and
Okay.
they can actually help you build your arrangement if they can. And it was just a matter of building relationships. I wasn't a new face.
Okay.
Again, working for free,
Okay.
making yourself available, building that network. It made it easier for me to start those conversations with them to say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Can you show me which flowers these are for me to do something similar to this? Can you show me what materials I need? And I spent many hours online doing a lot of research and reading a lot of text and literature on how to be a successful event business owner and how to be a successful florist. And it's very easy to be overwhelmed trying to filter through all of that content. And it took me many years to figure out what works and what doesn't. And because I now know it, I'm sort of trying to teach that so somebody else doesn't have to go through what I went through. You waste a lot of time. There's a lot of time and a lot of money that goes into trying to figure it out on your own.
Okay. So if the way I'm hearing it, you created a network through your first company, which was a retail company, and then you maintained that network.
You maintain that network because those are the people that are going to help you along the way.
So can you explain a little bit further on that? Because I think a lot of the Black culture, the people of color, culture, I cannot say they don't have networks, but I think young people don't fully grasp the need of having a network or what a network is actually. Maybe to many people be like, what's a network? Is it just the fact that I've got people in a WhatsApp group? What really is a network? Right. When you're saying I have a network, what does it mean?
When you have a network of people, it's not just people you call on to ask for favors, right? Because sometimes that's how you perceive network of people. It's like, I can just call you and you do stuff for me when I ask. You have to have value yourself, and you have to have something to offer. And you have to, and that's how you build relationships. It's a give and take. Okay. You are not always going to be taking from someone and call it a relationship, right? Of course, the lower hanging fruits for younger folks that are not good at it would be to join your local networking events. There are many, many free apps like Meetup. At the time when I was younger, Meetup was what I used to meet new people. So Meetup would have different types of groups based on interests. People who like to cook, people who like to run, all kinds of interests. And then you join the folks that are within the interest that you want. And they always had a schedule for their meeting and what they're doing. And when you go there, because you guys are there on a common ground of mutual interest, it's easier to have conversations. It's easier to then talk about who you are, what you're trying to do. And then you build these friends, you build these networks. And before you know it, the folks in that group are connecting you to other people that can facilitate what you need. But the goal is to not just go and have fun and that's it. Okay. You want to go there to build relationships that are going to add value to you, and you're going to add value too, because they'll keep you. In this country, at least what I've learned is productivity is key. If somebody can witness that you're a very productive person and you bring value, they'll hang on to you, they'll value you, and they will show it too.
Okay. Interesting. Great. So maybe as a closing to this issue of networking, can you give an example maybe for yourself, or you can generalize it? Like if I'm going to an event right now, it's a networking event in my local vicinity. Then I meet a bunch of all these people. What do I do? Like, what do I do with them? Like, what's next?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately for introverts, this is very difficult. Okay. Easier for an extrovert because it's easier to strike up a conversation. Okay. But when you do go to these networking events, at least have an objective in mind, right? You don't just blindly go, because then you don't know what to say. You don't know how to approach anyone. You don't know where to start. I have a very formal mind, and I always went to very formal, structured events, not so much social oriented events. Okay. And I had the privilege of working for companies that allowed me to go to networking events like IFT, that's the Institute of Food Technologists, right? Where I got to meet my peers that I went to college with, and you grow with them in the industry. But in cases where you're coming from, a different country, maybe you didn't have an opportunity to grow with anyone that are in those networking places, I would say go with an objective in mind. At least do not put the pressure on yourself to extract something out of them other than to just introduce yourself. Hey, my name is such and such. This is what I do, if it's in a work-oriented, and I would love to learn more about you. Show interest in the people that you're meeting. Ask them about themselves, allow them to open up and talk to you. And that's how you build that conversation. And that conversation can literally build into other conversations with additional people within that environment. So introduce yourself and ask them, tell me more about you. I'm interested in learning more about you. And that's how you get that conversation going, especially if you're an introvert and you're nervous and you're not sure what to say and how to start. People love to talk about themselves. So
Yeah.
start that way.
Okay. That's great. And then after this first conversation, maybe how do I keep up with them in the future? Maybe this one is a social event or a formal event. Now I have their number. They warmed up to me, but what do I do next? What can I do? I text a message after a week, after a month? Do I call them and say, hey, I'm that
Oh, the
guy?
structured conversations. That's a good one. That's actually a good
Yeah.
follow-up question. What I've learned, you check in. If you show interest in them, obviously you're not gonna know everybody at the event, maybe a few key people. If you can identify a few key people that you have something in common to follow up with them on. So it's not a cold and really strange follow-up where it's like, who are you and why are you texting me or what? But you have something that bridges the conversations to be where you can follow up. So which is why it's important for you to go to networking events that are actually relevant to you and what you're trying to do, not just any random networking event where you don't bring any value, they don't add any value to you. It's very difficult to stay connected with those folks. So if you go to an event that is of interest to you, aligned with what you're trying to do, it's easy to then follow up like, hey, I'm checking in with you. How are you doing? I saw this article about and it's linked to what you were doing, and I just thought of you. Like, show people that you're interested in them, not just what you can get from them.
Okay.
And at the very least, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Okay.
Just to stay
Keep in touch.
top of
Keeping in
mind.
touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's like you're marketing yourself. Make them remember you. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and just keep a Rolodex of them, and filter through them, and just keep the high value ones at the very top, and stay on top of that.
Okay, great. Great insights indeed. Great insights indeed. Okay, so okay, now you have kitchen to retail.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened for you to then? I already have this business, and now I'm into kitchen to retail. What really happened?
During COVID,
Mhm.
a lot of happened. A lot of there was a lot of layoffs happened during COVID as well, which is really scary.
Okay.
Even though I wasn't part of it. With kitchen to retail foods, I realized how volatile the market can be, and you start thinking about, oh wow, you don't know what's happening in the world. Everybody is panicking, and you're thinking, is my job secure? Of course, I'm in the essential business industry where you have to go to work because you have to feed the country and you have to feed the people. But I was really taken back by how many people lost out on their jobs during COVID.
Okay.
Especially some companies that sunk because people were in lockdown and they couldn't go to eat, or they couldn't do the activities they normally do.
Okay.
And they just incurred so many losses during that short space of time.
Yeah.
And we're out of business. While I had my business in the event industry, we were on lockdown. It means people are canceling weddings, they're canceling events.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long this COVID thing is going to happen for, but I do know that people need to eat.
Okay.
And I do know that, within my own industry as a food scientist, there are not many of us out here. And maybe we have to come up with a different way of feeding people. We may have to come up with different formulations. So that kind of inspired kitchen to retail foods, because my event business wasn't moving. Everything is shut down. People are not supposed to be gathering together at all.
Okay.
What do you do? Right. So kitchen to retail foods came up. And honestly, that's what prompted it. It was COVID. And funny enough, I had clients, because now you have people that are like, how do I make money? how do I sell my food products? How do I sell my cookies or whatever it is how do I sell my bars? How do I get into business that is selling, and that's food, right? Among other obviously industries that were essential. Food was one of them. And I actually picked up quite a good number of clients during COVID in the food industry as a consultant to help them build a scale their food products and manufacture them, because manufacturing companies were still operational.
Okay. So I think you've mentioned a little bit exactly what you do. Can you further elaborate on that? Like what you do with kitchen to retail?
So kitchen to retail food, it's a consultation business that facilitates a food enthusiast, anybody who wants a food product to be sold in retail stores.
Okay.
Or if you don't want to do B2B and you want to be B2C, which is business to consumer, you're selling directly to the consumer. I'm just helping you commercialize your product from concept. If you just have an idea of it, building formulation, getting marketing insights on who your target market should be, where you should probably sell this product. And if you are to do B2B, who your ideal B2B partners should be based on your type of product. Doing competitive assessments of the market, what is already on the market, and how can you differentiate your product so it stands out and attracts the right clientele that you're trying to go after. And of course, you do prototyping, right? You make a sample of your product. You have to do consumer tests. Are people going to want to eat what you're making? You can't say my cousin and my uncle, right? Because that's biased. So I connect you to companies that have a pool of people, that can help you do the consumer tests that we need to do. And there's so many types of consumer tests we can actually do. And that's what's going to drive the formulation, right? The recipe of your product. It's going to drive your price point, and it's going to drive packaging and so many things that are going to make your product a success on the market. And then from there, we talk about scaling up. Okay, we've made prototypes, probably made them in your kitchen, maybe in a commercial kitchen somewhere. Now we have to scale up. And scaling up from your kitchen to mass production where you're making thousands of pieces per minute or per hour is not the same.
Yeah.
We're no longer using eggs and high cost goods. We're going to use mass production oriented ingredients that you can find easily in the supply chain. So you cannot use this special ginger from Tibet that maybe your auntie sends to you every year. We have to get a commercially viable ginger powder that we can buy in thousands at a time. And that's where most people kind of fall through, because they don't understand the impact scalability has on their product when they have this beautiful idea that tastes amazing. It's amazing food, but most of the time it's not scalable. So that's where I spend a lot of time with my clients, is on the scalability piece, and to then teach them how to let go of certain attributes that they thought were the most important. Like, no, the consumers don't want that, and no, there's no way to make that and make a profit. And so basically I take them all the way to the end.
Okay, interesting. So it seems like you actually take people from zero to hero, like it's from stage 0 to the final line.
Yeah, that's what we call the commercialization process in the food industry. So it's the full,
Okay, so just to make this a little bit juicy, let's assume somebody who has no clue about this industry, but you've got this idea that this chocolate, maybe it's a protein chocolate, and it feels like I can make money with this because I have a gym or I own gyms. And then that person approach a person like you, a consultant. What is the costing range that we are looking at? What is it? How big are these monies? Is it something 10,000? Is it something below 20? Are we talking hundreds, millions? What are we talking about?
I would say you should at least have no less than 30,000.
Okay.
And this is me pulling a number because this, depending on the product that you have, the cost is going to vary. Some products are more expensive to launch and some are not. I say 30,000 on average. Now, fortunately for us, we already have products on the market, right? The fact that you can go to the grocery store and buy something means somebody has already formulated something. So part of my job is to reverse engineer what's already on the market. I can take a look at a product and I can reverse engineer how it was made. And then we can actually map out very early in the process what it's going to take to launch what you want to launch based on what's already on the market, and
Okay.
actually cost that out at the very beginning.
Mhm.
And before you make the decision to actually invest the money and take that journey. And that's why it's important to actually partner with someone like myself or somebody who's in the industry to understand those metrics at the very beginning,
Yeah.
and then we launch it.
Yeah.
So 30,000 is average across many, many products. It could be way more, it could be less. And the only time it's less is if you're taking an existing product, an existing formulation from a contract manufacturer, and you're putting your brand on it. That is
Oh.
something I've helped people do as well.
Mm.
Is if you don't have the money to formulate and do all of this extra work, and you know that you're just making another version of something that's already on the market, I
Okay.
usually pivot my clients to, let's look at which contract manufacturers we can partner with that have something that's close to what you want, and let's see if we can brand it as
Okay.
your own and maybe make minor formulation changes that don't incur a lot of costs for
Interesting.
you.
So let us assume that maybe I have that 30,000, 50,000, right? And a lot of people are fascinated by the fact that I own this product. You know, I made this drink, this chocolate.
Yes.
You know, and a lot of people actually do entrepreneurship just for that propensity. You know, now
Yeah.
if I approach a person like you, you're technical, you're a consultant, you know these things from zero to hero, but I want to understand like the marketing bit of it. Is it
The
then
marketing
going,
piece.
yeah, is it going to be easy for me to find my, avatar, the person who's going to take and buy and eat my chocolate or drink my energy drink? How difficult is that to do? Or the way you consult even with your clients, if people actually bring 50,000 to you, you can, with your team, figure out that.
We can definitely figure it out for you. But most of the time, my style is to bring you along the journey. I
Okay.
don't just take the project and run with it without you. I bring you along because I need you to understand what it takes to scale your
Okay.
product and to actually identify your clientele. So again, always start with market assessment. With any project that I do in the food industry, you start with a market assessment. Is there a market? Can
Okay.
you work in any store, including the stores that you think your type of people? So by yourself, if you're creating a product, you're your first customer, right? You yourself are interested in that product. And you may know a few people that consume similar products to you. Whether your product is in the natural channel, right? That's the Whole Foods shopper, the Trader Joe shopper. We call those natural consumers, natural channel consumers. And then you have mass market consumers. That's your Target, your Walmart. So you already have a feel of where you shop, where you spend most of your time, and the type of products that you consume. So you start there. It's nothing super complex, right? You don't need a lot of gadgets, but you just need to be very realistic. So with that, market assessment is important. If you're looking at that channel, that consumer channel, what's on the shelf? What is being promoted the most? What claims are being made on those products, right? Because that's going to go back to yours. How are you differentiating yourself? How can we differentiate your product from what's on there? And consumers actually want it. So there are consumer insight databases that we use to tell you what's the best selling product in that segment, right? We can tell you that it's this brand, this item.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We can actually go pick that item from the store, side by side with what you are trying to do, and differentiate it from there on. That differentiation can either cost you a lot of money. Most likely it will, because a lot of these brands put millions towards those items, right? And if you're starting up, I would say bite what you can chew.
Okay.
Don't try to be the next Nabisco, because Nabisco has millions behind all their brands and a lot of formulation integrity behind the things that you consume. As simple as they may seem, they're paying people like myself a lot of money to formulate for those things. So there's a lot of power behind it. So as somebody who's starting out, let's be humble in how our aspirations, right? I know you're looking for that. I made this and it's amazing and it's great and it's mine, but who's buying it?
Okay.
And that then humbles us into our local spheres of influence, right? That networking that we talked about at the beginning.
All right.
If you are going to pitch your product, What do you want that person to remember the most about your product? What do you want, what value you bring into their life because of that product?
Okay.
There's a lot that goes behind it, and it's not as simple as it may sound, but I would urge people not to just automatically think you're gonna hit the stores and everything's gonna be great. Most people actually lose a lot of money in the process because there's a lot to learn, especially if you're launching something that's new and unheard of, or it's not even on the shelf right now. You have what we call consumer education.
Yes.
Consumer education means how are you going to teach your target consumer how to use your product?
Yeah.
How are you going to teach them why it's important? And there's a lot of money that goes. So now the avenues you use, if maybe you have a supplement and you maybe go to your local gym, right? If you're a member at LA Fitness, you started your supplement, go to LA Fitness and say, hey, I have this amazing product that I'm willing to sell through your LA Fitness stores as a pilot test, right? Have all your documentations in order. Of course, you have to have compliance with regulations, of course, to distribute to the public. Maybe that's the avenue that you take, using your local resources to get your product out there and to educate the consumer on how to use your product, and then see how they respond to it, and then expand from there based on what are your consumers saying. You can say one thing about your product, but the market tells you how good your product is. You don't tell yourself that. You can design the best that you can, but you have to be responsive to what the market tells you and what your consumer says about your product, and then you go from there. So as much as I would love to give a very simplified response, it's not that simple, because there's so many avenues you could take based on the type of product you want to launch in the food space or supplement space.
Okay, great. That's a great answer. So now you're going further ahead to expand this business. You're doing Food Science Africa. What is this all about? Has it already started? At what stage are you, and how does it connect with Kitchen to Rental?
Michelle, Food Science Africa is at its infancy.
Okay.
I'm still ideating how to best execute it. It's a concept. I've built a platform for it to function. I'm a fan of turnkey projects. I build all the processes and things. I just need to plug people in. Of course, there's a journey to grow and to kickstart it and all of those things, but the platform exists. And what inspired it is food security in Africa. It's a big challenge. A lot of people who use subsistence farming don't really have a way of surviving without importing, right? And my goal is, well, we have enough resources for us to export and to be self-reliant. And Food Science Africa is going to be nurturing food science students, because we do have food science programs in Africa with food science students. But as you know, in our education system, and I can speak for our country, Zimbabwe, it just teaches you how to be an employee. It doesn't teach you how to enterprise and be self-reliant and self-sufficient and to, be an entrepreneur. So my goal is to and then empower our own food science students, our own folks, to actually channel and to promote the food science department and the food industry in Zimbabwe, to then leverage our own crops, our own indigenous fruits, actually. Whether we're taking the supplement route, creating ingredients out of it. I'll give you an example. Citrus fiber. Citrus fiber is an ingredient that started out of Israel. What it is, it's a orange peel or a lemon peel that you process to get a fiber out of the peel. That fiber actually works as a binder and can be used to bind meat. So when you make a meat product, you can use it as a binder in meat. You can use it as a binder in baked products. And it has really good water holding capacity. Anything that has water holding capacity, oil holding capacity can be used as a functional ingredient in the food industry. And literally, and you can imagine how many orange peels you throw away at home, right? That's, to me now, I look at it, I'm throwing money in the trash can. Like every time I eat something, I'm throwing money in the trash can. So something like that for our people at home or in my country or in my continent, we have a lot of resources already that we don't recognize
Yeah.
as opportunities for monetary gain because we don't have the education or the insights into how we can do that. And my goal with Food Science Africa is to empower our food science students or graduating students to start thinking that way and to start looking at the things they have around them already that don't require a lot of monetary investment, to start leveraging it just by teaching them the processes that it takes to convert an orange peel into a citrus fiber that can then be exported, and giving them the right tools to be legally compliant, to export to other countries, and then generate that income, and maybe even use those ingredients within our own food systems
Okay.
to create shelf-stable foods.
That's great. That's great. That's interesting. That's a very great vision that has good potential to change and revolutionize the food industry. Okay, so how many companies right now do you have? Let's talk about companies that you have and they are functional right now and you're working on.
Mhm. I have 5 companies that are functional that I'm working on.
5 companies. So now let's
I
let's put your job there. So you literally have 6 projects, your job and 5 companies. Is that so?
That's true. And then being a mom, that's 7.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
8.
yeah, it's a prioritization game. It's really a
Okay.
prioritization game. I'm a
How,
planner. My
how-
brain works
okay,
in
how do you
planning.
manage it? How do you manage your time?
Through prioritization. So there are certain businesses that are viable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are certain businesses, you look at the turn, right? The turn of your business. How, if you look at the cycle of each transaction, and you look
Mm-hmm.
at the cycle of how long it takes you to get a client and the
Mm-hmm.
processes that are in place for you to generate, to get new leads,
Mm-hmm.
generate money, and all of that. If you look at that, there's certain businesses, like my event businesses, turns faster than
Okay.
my food business, because my food business, the commercialization process can span over a year, 2 years, right? Because
Okay.
there's a lot of learning that needs to take place about your product and positioning, risk
Okay.
mitigation, and so forth. With events, my risk mitigation is really nominal to none. You
Okay.
want an event, you have certain colors, it's a birthday party. We all know what birthday parties are. It's very
Okay.
easy to execute that. So that business, it's an immediate turn, it's a faster turn. So
Okay.
I prioritize that because that income is then feeding the other businesses that have longer terms. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I build. So my action items are based on the businesses that have the faster turn first and the businesses that have a longer term last. So I may work on kitchen to retail a few times a month, but
Okay.
with adorned occasion and Farai Machina events, I'll probably work on it several times a week because that's where I'm having the faster turn and the
Mm-hmm.
faster income generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I prioritize things. So I'm not doing everything at once all the time, every
Okay.
day. You
Okay.
sort of have to plan things out long term, like, okay, if I can get this working and running, and if I can automate as many things as possible, it then gives me space to focus on the next project that has longer turns to make them shorter turns. That's a lot
Okay.
of time and investment. And then you just keep going in that format.
Okay. So, do you have employees or you do this by yourself with systems?
Part-time,
Part-time
part-time.
employees.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you
Yeah.
how do you relate with these part-time employees? Do they work somewhere else? Then you just call them.
They
Oh,
most of my part, yeah, they all have other jobs, most of them.
okay.
Or they work for other, yeah, they all have other jobs, or they're business owners themselves.
Okay.
And there's so many, it's really easy to get part-timers. It's just harder to find quality part-timers.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I go through employment agencies for staffing.
Okay. Okay.
And to me, it's sustainable because I factor that cost into
Mm.
my operation, like in my operation cost as
Yeah.
my into my events.
Okay.
So each event is a project on its own. I look at one event as one project with
Okay.
its running cost and execution costs, and
Mm.
and then I charge my clients accordingly
Okay. Okay.
while
Cool.
staying competitive. Because if I have employees, that's
Mm-hmm.
consistent overhead, I'll
Mm-hmm.
most likely have to I may price myself out of business if I'm not careful with the type of
Yeah,
overhead I carry.
that's true. And what about marketing? How are you marketing your business? Is it word to mouth? Or maybe I can be specific with kitchen to retail. When you started, how did you market? How did you send the word out?
Networking.
Networking again. Okay.
Because I built a network in the food industry and I built a reputation for myself, value-centered reputation. It was word of mouth.
Okay.
And word of mouth and networking, I joined certain women entrepreneur groups in the food space.
Okay.
And they keep a catalog, a directory of people, and
cool.
people reach out to you that way, and you attend the events. You talk about what you do because that's how people learn about you.
Yeah.
And that's how I get the clients. Like, oh, I know the lady who's trying to make this product. I'll connect you to, and then they become my client.
Interesting. But this is interesting. Okay.
Networking is crucial for business growth. Yeah.
Okay. So it reduces your the customer
acquisition. For something like kitchen to retail, absolutely. Of course, because it's my long term, like it's my longer term project. So I'm not hyper focused on it. I am relying on that word of mouth. I'm relying on my network to keep me top of mind. And I'm participating in conversations within the food industry to keep my name relevant without having to actually do work all the time and every day, because I know that's my long-term project. But with the event space, that's different. The event space actually takes a lot of money to advertise. The only way people will know you offer a service is if you advertise in front of people. And the more frequently you are in front of people, the more credibility you build. Just by being seen and that brand awareness, and people become familiar with your brand, they actually generate trust in a different way.
That's true.
Where they're like, oh, I know that company. I've seen that company before. And then people start to come to you because they associate with you with a certain service. So I would say the event industry costs a lot more money. Word of mouth helps. But at the same time, you have to participate in trade shows. You pay to have a table where you can showcase your work. You participate in online advertising platforms like Wedding Wire, The Knot, Party Slate, where you pay a certain fee to have your business featured. So every time somebody types in, I need such and such an event service, those websites, because they do have the money and they do invest in search engine optimization. That's how you get your name out there as well.
Okay, interesting. A lot of things to learn. All right. Now tell me a time when you failed or you made a wrong decision during your entrepreneurship journey, and how did you recover from that journey? How did you stay mentally sane after, turning left instead of right?
I have many of those. I think one of the unexpected but common way people fail is when you're so focused on competing. And you compete on price, which is a race to the bottom. Because you're trying to take free jobs or free events. Like, at some point you have to stop. I started pricing myself correctly later. Because self-perception, of course, I'm like, well, I'm trying to compete, so I'm going to compete on pricing. I think the biggest mistake I made at the very beginning was competing on price and not competing on value. Until I understood how to add value to my services in such a way that my clients should be able to pay for the higher end price. So competing on price is a big mistake most people make when they join, because they're like, well, I can do it cheaper, which is very common, more common than you can imagine. And what you find is that your profit margins are very low, and it takes you a lot longer to scale. And a lot of unexpected things happen in business. And if you do not have the reserves to take care of those unexpected things, you either end up borrowing money, or you're consuming all the money that you just made, and now you're starting again from scratch. So I think for me, one of the biggest, I would call a consistent mistake I made for quite some time, was competing on price. Even though I made money, I was retaining very little, and it took me so long to scale on revenue.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. And also now, as a Black female, immigrant kid in America, you came here, you went to uni, and you got you got hired in this job as a scientist. You're also a female scientist, right? So there are a lot of things which are rare about you right now. You're a female scientist. You are Black. You're an
Mm-hmm.
immigrant, and you are doing a technical job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how was it? How was it? Can you narrate to us, were there challenges that you met, or though the challenges were there, given your mindset, maybe you didn't consider them to be part of your challenges, though you were seeing other people struggling with those challenges, and you just continued bulldozing your way up to the top. How was it like? Did you at any point felt like, oh my God, this is happening because I'm Black? This is happening
Yes.
because I'm
Many
female.
times.
Is
Many
this
times.
okay? All right. Can
Yeah,
you
it's an uphill battle, and it still is actually.
okay?
And most of my career, I've been the only Black person on the team,
Mm,
except for maybe one time for like 2 years, I wasn't the only
okay.
Black
Okay.
person on my team. I've always been the only Black employee. Right now I am the only Black employee in the entire organization.
How many people does that
Um,
organization have?
it has, I think, seven. I work for a startup, and so that organization is about 100 people, and
Yeah,
I'm
and you're the
one.
only Black person.
I'm the only Black person, and it's biotech,
Yeah.
a biotech company too. Brightseed, it's making huge leaps and strides.
Hmm.
What I learned, at least this is what my parents advised me. They just say to me, "What I just need you to understand that you're Black. I need you to just accept it
Hmm.
and do not hyper focus on your Blackness because it's inevitable that it's going to stick out. It's inevitable that decisions are going to be made based on it. So
Hmm.
now that we've established that being Black is a challenge and you've accepted that it's a challenge,
Hmm.
let's spend the energy that you'd have used to be angry, to worry, to be frustrated,
Mm.
to productivity and
Hmm.
value."
Okay.
And what I did learn early in my career
Mm.
was that if you are very productive, which people call black taxing, where you work twice as hard, it's true. You
Okay.
work twice as hard as your white counterparts
Hmm.
to get the same visibility, to get the same promotion
Hmm.
or what job retention, if you may call it that.
Hmm.
And basically, over time, if you're able to focus and to add value to yourself and to take on those opportunities, which,
Hmm.
that come your way in as far as education, as far as, if you work for a company that reimburses you for education, go get those advanced degrees if you can, if you don't
Okay.
have to pay for them.
Hmm.
And that is something that I took advantage of.
Hmm.
Um, and there's no easy way
Hmm.
to talk
But
about these
but
things.
let's say, for example, give me a scenario of something that happens, like happens in real time, right? And how did you respond to that? How did you overcome that? Like, something like that. Like in real time, yeah. Can you give me an example? Maybe someone is actually going through something right now and they can learn through your experience. It doesn't really you don't have to give us details. You just
Of
get,
course,
yeah.
I think the one that sticks out to me the most, which didn't happen not too long ago, I was leading a very high profile project in the company. When I got hired,
Mm.
a lot of people that hired me didn't know I was Black until I got hired.
How is that?
They hired me based on my skill set on my resume, and it was a lot of phone conversations. And they
Okay.
gave me a project that's supposed to be turnkey to 12 billion for the company in the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my job was to start up a new product line, new formulations, new everything. Basically, it's an empty floor. We're
Mm-hmm.
putting equipment in, we're building, we're also formulating. We have
Mm-hmm.
to launch a product, 6 products in 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and get return on investment for 19 million.
Mm.
Now, being that a lot of people didn't know I was Black, um, I could tell. The first thing you're going to notice is the conversations change. The conversations are not the same.
Okay.
You're challenged more. I would get questions like, have you actually ever launched anything? And you're
Mm.
thinking, I submitted a resume
Yeah.
with all the things I've launched. Why is this person who's on my team asking me if I've ever launched anything?
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of condescending questions. You
Mm-hmm.
get challenged. You have to prove yourself more. And you find that some of the ideas that you have get hijacked, or mansplained, in other words, by your counterparts. And it's the mental tenacity that you have to lead people that don't want to be led by someone that looks like you is very draining. You have to be very strong, and you have to have a very strong support system. And navigating that means you're finding your allies, right? You are identifying, you're taking that extra time to identify who are the people in this organization that are your allies, that see your value and that value your presence there. And those are the people that are going to advocate for you. Unfortunately, as much as you want to say, I'm going to stand up for myself, do this on my own, that's not how it works. You have to have allies that are going to influence.
You need sponsors.
Exactly. That's the word, sponsors. You definitely have to find sponsors. And that takes some, again, networking skills, right? And you'll be able to recognize them, obviously, in your job. But productivity was key. I executed the project that they hired me to do very well, and they met their timelines. They got their return on investment, but it was very difficult. You were challenged every step of the way. Every decision that you made was challenged. And sometimes they're very direct as to why they're challenging you. And they don't even try to mince it. It's because you look different, or we're not comfortable, we don't know how to relate to you. We know how to relate to this other person that's white and not Black. And it's it can be very tricky, and it's very triggering. It's easy to entice emotional responses from you, but the mental tenacity that you have to have demands that you have a good support system around you outside of work as well, and you have means of releasing stress and frustration. So honestly, I used kickboxing. I kickboxed for years. Punching bags and kicking bags. You need an outlet.
In a way,
a healthy one.
Was that in a structured way, or is just a random box, in a person?
No, I literally joined a kickboxing club.
Cool.
Yeah. And and it actually helped me through, because it's a healthy way of releasing steam. But I think for me, something other people may not have is I came from parents that already were going through it themselves. So they mentally prepared me for it. And I watched them go through it. And it was painful to watch. And so I was mentally prepared for it to happen to me as well. And so then my mindset going in was not the same as somebody who may be unassuming. When you come from a majority Black country, you're not born thinking about your skin color. You're not born thinking about that being a hindrance. And then when it does happen, it took me a long time to catch on that, no, it's my Blackness. Because I was oblivious, because I didn't come from a country where I had to think about things like that. And then eventually you start to realize it, and then you now have to navigate differently.
Okay, interesting. I think there were a lot of insights there to learn from your experiences, and many other people actually do learn from that experience. I think, do you have any resources that you can recommend to other people who look like you, female scientists, female people in the corporate world, female entrepreneurs, maybe the Black community? Do you have any resources that I think if you did this, if you read this book, it will change you, or if you join this type of associations?
There are many, many resources. For me, I think, I guess I'm biased towards my family, because that was my source of support and my source of encouragement. My dad is in academia, he's a professor, and my mom also in academia. So I was able to leverage them and their insights to help in matters in that way. But joining organizations that are Afro-American centric, if you're in America, of course, helps. Because from those, they do teach you, they do give you tools that can help you manage certain situations. And they can be very, very specific too. So I don't have a specific organization that's female Black oriented that I joined to deal with that aspect of my career, because I leveraged my parents heavily for that. But I would say if in general, in life, the resources are always there if you look for them. Within your community of, whether it's a community of similar interests, a community of African Americans if you're African American, or a community of Zimbabweans if you're Zimbabwean, you tend to find like-minded folks that you build a network with and you build a home with and give resources. Yes, there are many books, obviously, that you can read to edify your, your path, whatever path you're choosing to walk in life, whether it's, academic related or entrepreneurship and so forth. I have so many books from so many different authors. I can't even recommend just one. But one I love is 48 Laws of Power. And 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Because I'm an introspector. I introspect a lot. I value intrinsic value. And I do a lot of self-work in order to build the type of attitude I need to succeed in the things that I work in. And that's probably the best way. I would say there are a lot of self-help books, obviously, and you find the ones that resonate with you to build your inner strength, to build that intrinsic value within yourself, because that's ultimately what's going to help you build the mental tenacity that you need, whether it's starting a business or powering through a career and learning how to influence people. So many books, so many titles.
Maybe in closing, is there anything else that I didn't ask that you wish I could have asked you? Something that you want to tell people, let people know?
You've done a good job of asking a good range of questions. But definitely, I would love to connect with your audience. If there are, people aspiring to start a business in the food industry, or looking to start a business in the event industry, or even in need of resources like a website and infographics, I would love to connect with them and help facilitate that process with them. And I'm sure you can share my information, my IG handles and all of that. And I love I have community at heart, and I'm a community-centered person. So the more people I can help, the more people they can help. And then we just continue doing that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I know I'll share the handles, but do you have like a website, something that if somebody's just listening right now, say, okay, she said if you can reach out to this, either it's a website or whatever you want to say, using your voice.
Absolutely. They can reach me at, I would say, Adorn Sites would be a great place to start, because you get to see a portfolio of the people that I've worked with who are business owners, who I've worked with, and you get to see a portfolio of those folks. And let's just connect through Adorn Sites, www.adornsites.com, ADORNEDSITES.com, and let's build something together.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Farai, for taking your time and telling us, all these insights and experiences. This was really, really eye-opening, and I hope a lot of people are going to learn a lot of things, and they are going to be encouraged and inspired, especially female Black scientists or aspiring scientists or aspiring entrepreneurs. I know that they're going to learn a lot from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.